Hi everyone, and welcome back to Spare a Thought, the podcast that shines a light on the people, ideas, issues and organisations that are often overlooked or misrepresented in the media. I'm your host, Tom Spare. I'm taking a break from the podcast to recharge my batteries and plan a 50th edition of Spare a Thought. So here is the rewind. The rewind is where I dive into the Spare a Thought archive to return to a previous conversation with a guest. Today I'm returning to a Matricentric Future with my good friend Sinnead Ali, the founder of Womb CIC. We discuss Sinead's yoga studio and community space, Womb, her journey to becoming a solo entrepreneur, and what a future centred around mothers and caregivers might look like. Information about Sinead's studio can be found in the show notes. I really enjoyed making this episode, so I'm glad I can return to it and highlight Sinead's awesome work. Hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you for doing the interview today.
Of course.
And we're in your lovely new studio.
Yeah.
Could you describe the space we're in currently?
Sure. So we're on Woodville Road in Cathay, so quite a busy, dynamic street. And as you enter, we have the main studio space. And I actually hand painted in a limestone effect. And it's this kind of like, some people call it peach, some people say pink clay. It's just quite a warm color that has been in my mind since like the very first inception. And yeah, it's quite open and there's nice gentle fabrics on the windows. So there's some privacy. It just feels quite nurturing and comforting, I think, but still quite spacious. And then we have 2 treatment rooms as well. One is based on the moon and the idea of kind of illumination and healing, and so it's called the Chandra room, which means moon in Sanskrit, and that is a space for any kind of body work, any hands-on kind of massage, things like that. And then the other space is called the Anahata treatment room, and that means essentially it's the heart chakra room, and that is perfect for kind of one-on-one chats. So we could be sat in there, but it's also things like dietitians seeing their clients, doulas, anywhere that you kind of want somewhere that's very calming. It's all green and quite grounding.
We've known each other nearly 10 years. I think it might even be 10 years. It could be 10 years this year.
It's more than 10 years.
More than 10 years.
Yeah, I was definitely 23 when I come back, so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, ish. No, maybe 24 actually.
Yeah, 11 years.
Yeah, 11 years.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And we're working in the Students' Union, but even then, you were talking about traveling, you were talking about becoming a yoga teacher or being a yoga teacher and working to support women.
Yeah.
Could you tell us the story of that journey of how it led to where we are now?
Yeah, it's a long story. So I was a temp at the university's student union in an advice clinic and was actually tempted to stay on because I did find especially the support around sexual assault survivors in the university and just the team that they had, they were so dedicated and so compassionate, and they'd said that if I stayed on I could train to be a counsellor. So very unexpectedly enjoyed that job a lot, and I think it did inform my interests and passions as I got a bit older as well, even though it was like 10 months in that role. I just finished my diploma in becoming a yoga teacher at that point, and I just started teaching. So a lot of people will go and do like a month-long course, or they'll break it up over several weekends. My course is actually over a year, quite in depth. There's a lot of self-study included in that. But yeah, it was kind of like a basic Hatha teacher certificate, and it allowed me to, after the role in the university, go and travel and teach, which was my plan. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with my life so much. I just knew that yoga would allow me to travel. I was able to move to Thailand, eventually got a job teaching at a retreat, and I was there for about 5 months in that particular space. And I think I grew up a lot there, and I just have so many like lessons from that time that really matured me. And I think I grew a lot as a person and as a teacher as well, because there were just hundreds of people coming through that I had to teach and really adapt my style and learn so much more about yoga than I did like training. Yeah, I had quite a unique experience. A lot of people will train and then go and teach in a studio and be in that space and probably see their regular clients. So I had a real crash course in kind of becoming a yoga teacher quite young. And then I was with I was dating someone who had just moved to Singapore. So after my time at the retreat, I moved to be with them. And Singapore is a great place for yoga. They absolutely love yoga there. It's much more kind of fitness focused, but there's loads of opportunities to be a teacher full time there. So that's what I did. I was teaching like 25 classes a week at one point, which doesn't sound much because that's 25 hours, but it was a lot physically. And I did find that I was getting injured, and eventually got so injured that I had to stop teaching for a while. But during that time, I was meeting women who would stay behind class and talk to me a lot about their cycles and things they were going through in their lives, just because I was very open, and usually would, whether it was simply like, oh, this is how you adapt a pose if you're, having a lot of cramps today, just simple things like that, or just generally being quite open about like my life. But I was finding students were staying behind and talking, and which is really lovely, but it was getting to be quite a lot. And I was like, there's so many people that just feel either quite isolated as like expats there, or just looking for community, or more spaces to talk about things that were important to them that may be a little bit taboo. So I started hosting women's circles in my flat, and it was like just a really informal gathering, and I just very much learned as I was going along. And I would attend circles of like people I regard as teachers, so that I could really practice what I was offering as well. And that just grew into a regular thing, and I've got friendships to this day from women I met at those circles back, that's like 8-9 years ago now. And then I just realized more and more that like I was just getting more niche with what I wanted to teach, and it was very much focused around the female body, and how a lot of yoga, especially the more fitnessy kind of focused stuff, isn't very suitable. Not all the time anyway. Like there's when you've got a lot of energy, it can be nice to really have a very fiery practice and really sweaty practice, but there's so many other types of exercise you can do for that anyway. I think yoga is so unique because of the self-connection that you can get. So it makes sense for me that it pairs with learning about the cycle, the menstrual cycle, learning about our bodies, how they work, and the different life phases as well. And it really teaches you to have more patience with yourself and a sense of gratitude as well. From there, I just ended up doing a pre and postnatal teacher training. I wasn't someone that ever was like really interested in like birth or even children or anything like that, but it just seems like the closest thing to what I was interested in, because it's obviously very anatomy focused around the female body at that time. And I really did love that training. I got to offer classes for a little while, so because it's much more gentle, there was like less risk of like injury and over teaching and that stuff. So I was able to get back into teaching through that. And alongside all of this, I had slid into the DMs of a sex therapist who I just come across on Instagram, and I thought her work was really fascinating. They were almost like Anne summer parties, but not sleazy. It was like education, but fun, but for adults. And I was like, it's just so important. People don't know a lot of like really basic stuff about their anatomy, and just like, it's literally a human right to have access to pleasure. And I don't think people necessarily know that. And so she just had an amazing way of putting things. And I said, I'll literally interview. I don't even know what I'm actually asking. I just want to learn from you. Just doing like really kind of menial tasks for her for a while. And then we got closer, and she said, I'm going to put on a festival. So she had organized Spark, which was sexual pleasure and relationship conversations. It was Asia's first sexual wellness festival, and I managed part of that. And then the next one I became co-founder, and then we would do things like pop-ups and various events, and we put on plays, and it was really incredible part of this journey. And then I was offered a job for one of our main sponsors. They were a sexual wellness company. Basically, they produced, can I say sex toys on?
Yeah,
Sex
toys. It'll be the first time.
I just did.
I don't think maybe it won't be the last now. Maybe it'll become a regular feature.
Very different kind of podcast. But yeah, that's what they manufactured, and they were, the whole thing was they were very female focused and body safe and anatomy informed, and like just such a cool different approach to anything like that. So yeah, I worked for them, and I got much more trained up on being able to like deliver kind of education based workshops. So sexual wellness was, I went from kind of yoga to sexual wellness being like my main focus for a while. I can't chalk it up to the exact moment, but it was definitely during the first lockdown, and I was living in Bali at the time for just under a year, but I was basically trapped in Singapore on a work trip. So during that first lockdown, where my focus just became on birth, and even though I had done that teacher training in the past, like I said, it just wasn't something I was really excited about. But yeah, I think I just got a bit of a hyperfixation just on like physiology. And I came across a birth worker called Mars Lord, who still has Abuela Doulas, which is a doula course and training, but it's very much also a community and a directory for birth workers. And her focus is on cultural safety and ending the disparity in maternal mortality in the UK for Black women and for Asian women, mixed heritage women. So I was really fascinated because I'd not really heard of like these disparities before. I didn't realize how harmful the way we kind of approach birth is, and how actually quite simple it can be if we just like get out of women's way and listen to them and treat them with respect and don't be racist. Things that, just seem, it's really fascinating. So that just caught my attention. And I did the same thing with Mars that I'd done to my ex-co-founder. I just messaged her and I was like, I really want to be on the course. I really want to learn from you. I just quit my job. It's in the middle of lockdown. I'm on the other side of the world from you. Here are the skills that I could offer. Can I help you in some kind of way? And then, maybe join your courses. So Mars got back to me. I was very surprised, actually. And I started as her like content creator for Instagram and helping out with different things on social media. And then I took her training online. And then I took her second training. And then I started taking trainings with Nicola, Red Tent Doula Collective, who her and Mars work together a lot as well. So yeah, I did all my kind of doula prep stuff, all my trainings pretty much online in lockdowns. In that between, I'd moved back. So this is about 4 or 5 years ago. Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, keep going. Hey.
This is so long.
No, because also I suppose because you came back, and I remember the time when you came back because it was like 2020, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. July 2020.
Yeah.
What a time.
What a time to be alive. And you were sort of talking about your experiences of being abroad. I didn't know a lot of that detail actually in your connection to Mars.
Oh, okay.
And one of my questions was about, who are your teachers, and you've mentioned some of those people already. You're in that situation when you're back. It's quite a change from the environment that you've been in and around. You're back home where you grew up in Cardiff. So then when did the idea of this place start to come? Where did the festival come first, and then?
As far back as maybe even before Spark, maybe, because I guess a vital thing that I've missed out is like when I was teaching at that retreat in Thailand, I had horrendous period pain, and I've been back and forth to the doctors here and in Thailand, like paid a lot of money to like see private doctors because I was like, there is something really wrong with me. I was on the pill at the time, They're having like really horrible kind of flare-ups, and they were quite certain that it could be endometriosis, but not really able to tell me for sure without doing surgery. And I was like, there has to be another way. But one of the reasons I became a yoga teacher was because my symptoms would just, whether it was like mood, would be so unpredictable, or like physical pain, to the point where like I'd have this pain down the back of my legs and I'd feel like a piece of like wood. Like I went from being very, agile person and very energetic person, and then the next day it can be completely different stories. So I needed a job that was flexible and adaptable, and so that kind of, it was why I was able to why I went down that path with teaching yoga, and why it became my main thing. And a horrendous pain in that yoga retreat. I remember meeting women going through a similar thing as well, and just having a really horrible time and not having any answers. So I think it was always in the back of my mind of like, we're not serving women and people with periods adequately, and yoga could really be a tool for that. So I think even like the arches that I have here, like in the doorways, details like that was always kind of in my mind, not just because it looks nice aesthetically, but I wanted a space that felt just very nurturing. And there's a charity in London, I can't remember what it's called, but the focus is on working with refugees and survivors of like war crimes, like people who've been, experienced torture, and they're building all the corners around it and all the archways around it, and even like the front desk, and it's basically trauma-informed design. So it's all about creating spaces that literally feel very comfortable and open and safe for people. So even back then I was like, had that in mind of like, how do we create these spaces for people who've probably going through a lot psychologically or physically. So it's always been in my mind in its own way.
I suppose each of those experiences that you had probably crystallized in your mind
the
need for it. And it had to be multifaceted. It couldn't just be one thing. You had to sort of be more holistic, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like dogmatic about the way I teach my classes or the way I'm, training teachers at the moment. It's not prescriptive in any kind of way. It's more of a space where you're able to just be, hopefully.
You start working, what was the organisation you're working for with? Was it refugee women, or was it?
Before that, I worked for Asylum Justice.
Asylum Justice, yeah.
So they're a pro bono law firm, and they are a charity. And I was just, like a receptionist, but kind of odd job person, as you are when you work in charities. You end up doing lots of different things as well. Hearing about and learning much more about the system, the asylum system in the UK, how violent it is and how unfair it is, and it's so far removed from what people perceive it to be. It's so much harder to get asylum here, any kind of support. So that really lit a fire under me. And then while I was working with them, one of the lawyers had said there's another charity that focuses on women and birth, and like this would combine, the doula trainings that I was still kind of doing, and like bringing all that together. And I just thought it was amazing. And I think I interviewed maybe 2 or 3 times before I actually got a job with them. They were really small at the time, literally volunteer run, and had maybe 1 or 2 members of part-time staff. So that was the Birth Partner Project, and they were literally created by a midwife and another, a few other amazing women volunteers mainly. And I started with them very much kind of social media again and assisting with that side of things. And then I was trained as volunteer coordinator. My role did kind of encompass so much more than that as well, if that makes sense. And I got to do a lot of really lovely like creative things with mums and like well-being things. And I was present at a lot of labors and a lot of births. So it was incredibly rewarding, but it was also really, really hard. And I think that compounded with the stress that I didn't realize was there from lockdowns. I definitely had burnout. So I had that period of burnout. Trained as an abdominal massage therapist with the Abdominal Therapy Collective, which is I could do a whole episode on that. Incredible. So I offer womb massage based on what I learned with them and trained in anatomy and physiology. And just at the most perfect time, was invited to be a coordinator at the Dream-In Retreat in Mid Wales. It's owned by Charlotte Church. And, you know, they get so many applicants to come and coordinate there. And you are, looking after a group of people who do expect like a really high standard experience. So it wasn't exactly easy, but for someone who's going through burnout, who still needs to make money and also getting to be in the well-being kind of space, it was just such an enormous like privilege to be able to do that. And it was so aligned as well, because they're very much about connecting with the land, and Charlotte talks about being guardians of the land as well. Her mission is to democratize wellness, essentially, and that everyone should be able to experience walking in ancient forests and singing to streams and lakes, and just the quality of the silence there and the really bright night sky. It's like the second darkest sky in the UK. So you're seeing like constellations really clearly, and just sitting around the fire pit, sound baths, and really beautiful like whole foods, and connecting with people you would maybe normally talk to. Just everything they're doing there is so wholesome, and there's so much history on the land as well. So it was just such an incredible experience. And I think on paper it's quite a far out idea, and I don't think maybe anyone else could have executed it apart from Charlotte, because she's very much a visionary. But having that experience definitely encouraged me to dream bigger, and just why not set up a space that's matricentric and cycle informed? Like, why can't that work? If what they're doing works, why can't this? So that was really foundational role as well for me to create this space.
Before we head into the next segment of the show, I want to highlight a recently released episode from the Be the Change Media Network. On Wednesday, the Political Dispatch co-host and network founder Lily Mott interviewed her dad, Chad, a high school teacher in the US, about a recent high school shooting which took place in Lily's home state of Colorado by a pupil of Chad's. It's a really moving and timely episode. And I would say, I know Lily really well, and we've interviewed her dad previously. It is a really eye-opening discussion where, in the UK, school shootings are very, very rare. You have to look back to the Dunblane massacre to see something that's comparable. And that very much speaks to the nature of political discourse in America, gun violence, attitude towards violence, the role of the media, and the role of money and inside influencing in the way in which laws are made in America.
What the problem is not necessarily radical voices that are liberal or conservative. The problem is allowing ourselves to be in those kind of echo chambers, and allowing ourselves as adults to be irresponsible in terms of our own intake and our own rhetoric, and looking at this and saying it's black and white and it's us versus them. I mean, that kind of division, is self-defeating, absolutely, for families, for individuals, for the country. And I think, you have to try to go out of your way to be better informed, because the more informed you are, the less ignorant you are, the more likely you are to be more moderate and be more appreciative. You're going to have less antipathy towards people who are different than you, and less prone to that kind of dangerous division that can lead, to modeling, unfortunately, bad behavior and potentially dangerous behavior. Instead of filling your minds with ideas and your heart with love and acceptance, you're filling your gun closet with weapons for the coming apocalypse. I think, you're modeling the bad behavior.
So I'd really recommend that episode. You can find it by searching bethechange.podcast. The episode is called Evergreen Strong: Lessons from Tragedy, Healing Together and Building a Better Future. And now back to the episode with Sinnead Ali, where we're talking about a matricentric future. Where we pick up now, we are talking about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and what that had on our mental health and wider societal implications. It was a very traumatic time, which I still think's gone massively under the radar. Like we've had to just move on and about it, which seems so problematic.
We take physical manifestations a lot more seriously, don't we? If someone breaks an arm, we're very sympathetic, whereas if they're having mental health struggles, it's a lot more, people are open to more kind of criticism, like, and a lot less empathy. And I think that's very similar as well. People who are having long-term physical symptoms and issues are kind of more isolated and maybe forgotten about a bit more, which is really sad. But I think all of us have been impacted psychologically, mentally, emotionally. Friendships, so many friendships were lost, and families as well, like so many divorces at that time. Yeah, it's just horrendous. We definitely haven't acknowledged it, but I'm like, I wonder how that would even start on a mass level.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't think our leaders are very interested in telling people to take a beat and look after themselves. It's not very productive, is it?
No, it doesn't help economic growth.
No, the GDP will not
grow. But I mean,
eventually, they had long-term thinking.
Well, yeah, it would. And this is the thing. Like, I suppose this is what your work's all about. It's more holistic. It's more community-based. It's everyone working together and listening to the people that are going through that experience, which seems so, as you said, it seems so straightforward to do. Changes that could be made in the NHS, in our wider welfare state. I mean, this is a welfare state that's existed for 80 years. It's creaking, it's not designed for the length of time that we live. It's not designed for the complexity. It's not, when the welfare state was created, it was a very homogenous society. But now we're far more diverse, and that's a great thing.
Yeah.
But those old systems don't match up with the 21st century.
And I think human rights have come a long way, and women's rights have come a long way. So maybe we were more happy back when the NHS was starting, that women were just surviving childbirth, and now it's like, now we talk more about trauma and things like that. We're acknowledging that a routine episiotomy isn't actually good, and so that doesn't happen as much anymore. But we maybe haven't caught up in other ways when it comes to like care and individual kind of treatment and continuity and things like that.
Yeah, and being able to like respect older ways. Like there is such a focus on, and we'll talk about the festival, but at the festival there was a lot of talk about forgetting about what it was to be in communities, and Mars talked about it in one of her sessions, where we moved from being in small communities to being in high-rise flats and in very busy cities where we're individuals rather than a collective. So we sort of lost a lot of that tradition, where it's more matriarchal society. It's more based around cycles of the year, not just a person's biological cycle, but also nature cycle as well. So it's
a part of nature.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than being like I don't know, there's this thing that we're the ones that rule the roost, but we're really meant to be the protectors of Earth. We're not meant to be
the guardian.
Yeah. So it's
that's quite biblical of you.
Thank you. Well, my name's Thomas, so it's very and I went to Church of England school, Catholic secondary school, so there's
well, I'm sure it's a very pagan thing as well. I don't know, it just reminded me of like gardens and looking after gardens and the idea of being trusted with the planet.
And we're not at the top of the chain. We're just sort of part of it and part of the cycle, and everything we go through cyclical. I mean, the world that we're going through now, and what the re-rise of fascism, we obviously don't need to go into all of that, but it it's gone out. The people that lived that time aren't really here anymore. So there isn't really there are not many living people left who were old enough to be able to say this was terrible.
And if we cared more, respected more, when it comes to elders, maybe we would have heeded their warnings and not think that there's kind of some exception if we do all the really hateful, heinous things again.
Yeah, exactly. The world as it is, I think, is incredibly selfish because it's driven by this idea that to get anywhere you need to make a load of money. But I mean, we can't take it where you're going. So you not as well treat people well here, And I suppose that's, you know, at the center of what you're doing is trying to bring people together. The practice that you have here is very matricentric. What does that mean?
Yeah, so all of the yoga classes are cycle informed. So each class basically represents a different phase of the cycle. You don't have to be in that phase yourself. You don't even have to have a cycle presently. You don't have to have ever had a cycle. It's just a way of dropping in that kind of wisdom. And I think probably the most natural way for us, if we lived, more cyclically, to relate to what our energy cycles can be like as well. So, starting off with this kind of like idea of like rising energy and challenging ourselves, and then more creative, more flowing, and then kind of reaching that peak of building a lot of strength, a lot of heat, and then winding down into something more gentle and finding stillness, which reflects, the seasons of the year. It reflects the life of things like plants and also, the menstrual cycle. So that's what the classes are based on, and it's open to everyone. But the idea of matricentric literally means to center the mother. It's not matriarchal, which is like the opposite of patriarchy. It's the idea that if we were to center the needs of the individuals who are mostly the ones responsible for nurturing the most vulnerable of our species, then that kind of the effect of them thriving ripples out into society. And so we can set them up as parents, but also set the children up for healthier, more happy lives. And you just have to think of things like, we're doing it in a space that is fairly easy to do. So, having like baby changing here, we're having ramps installed for the postnatal classes so the prams can get in. And then we're having loads of different events and circles and talks and offerings that are very specific around having really honest conversations and supportive community for moms and for parents. But the whole point is that it somehow will have a ripple into society, and you just have to like walk down the street and people are, for example, like parked on the pavement. That really irks me. If we were more matricentric and thought about that person who's pushing a double pram, we would maybe design cities in a way that not so heavily focused on spaces for cars, but really thinking about the most vulnerable. And that would also, that would then benefit people who are differently abled, who have wheelchairs and different access needs as well. So I think that's just like one really obvious example of like how if we were more matricentric, that those needs would kind of ripple out. And if we were just, starting from that vantage point, because that I'm not saying mothers are more vulnerable in the sense of weak or, need more or anything like that. It's they're responsible for a human life that can't look after itself at all. And so traditionally in any culture, if you go back, whether it's a few decades or hundreds of years, there would have been support systems around that child, not just a mother and baby. It would have been looking after the mother, looking after the other children, and just way more connected. As you mentioned, like Mars said, we would have all lived together, whether that's with, our parents for much longer into their later life, or we would have stayed just closer to our families in general. So parenting wouldn't have been something that now people can make a lot of money out of and really market because it's so hard. Whereas it wouldn't have been as hard because we would have had that village like support. Whereas now it's like, million books out there and all sorts, because people were really struggling. They because we live in capitalism, under capitalism, they internalize it as a problem with them, but it's literally like nothing in the way we function socially is built to support you, and that's why it's so hard.
Yeah, 100%. And you just need to look at childcare costs.
Exactly.
And UK has the highest childcare costs in Europe, and it's only going up and up and up. And so then the government ends up doing quite clunky intervention by giving people discount for their childcare. What about making more community-based services? So you're using that money more wisely. The first 5 years of a child's life, it basically sets them up for the rest of their life.
Yeah. Definitely, that bonding is so important. And then there are parents who are essentially like reprimanded for going back to work, but when they're paying for childcare, they might as well just be staying home. So it's like you can't really win. There's not really much room for choice or autonomy. And then the treatment from like the general public is often, I hear, like, oh, well, you decided to have the children, as if it's become like a luxury to have kids now. I just think we've got to a really sad place where there's so much judgment for people just doing it's the most human thing in the world is to reproduce.
And I suppose the festival you put on, a lot of those sessions were offering a future where that might be possible again, or, returning back. Could you talk about the second Womb Festival that took place in Grangetown and tell us about the festival and how it links to the work that you do here?
Yep, so Womb Festival, Summer Festival, it was the second one. I mean, it's very similar to last year, but I did want to create an atmosphere that felt quite village-like, so I think we achieved that this year. Our focus, just like at the studio, is on menstrual well-being, maternity and menopause. So it was a day of talks, of workshops, lots of yoga and movement practices, a few stalls. We partnered with a few community groups and charities as well. So they had stalls, ceremony, and then things to keep children entertained, a bit of like edutainment as well. But the theme this year, we didn't really talk about the theme too much. Basically, when you go for funding, if you're going for the same pot of funding, you have to kind of have a different project idea. So what we pitched to the National Lottery Community Fund was that we're really focusing on the idea of bringing back the village. And that was based on last year's festival. We had a panel talk that was called Where's My Village? And it was all about supporting one another in the fourth trimester. So that is the period after giving birth where a lot of women and birthing people feel desperately alone, underprepared, undersupported, exhausted. The biggest crash you'll ever experience with your hormones, sleep deprivation, all those things kind of compounded with the lack of support and preparation for a huge initiation that a lot of the time we're not really supported through. That is birth. And that fourth trimester, a lot of people are really kind of surprised, and there are huge rates of birth trauma and postnatal depression. And then suicide is also like such a huge risk during that time for a lot of women as well. So it is a really important time, I think, for us to talk about more openly. And it's not just the responsibility of pregnant people, birthing people, women and their partners. I think there is an opportunity for us all to have some knowledge about how we can look out for our friends, our neighbours and our families. So yeah, the festival's focus was this idea of bringing back the village. We had a range of talks and workshops and things like that, but I would say there was a slight emphasis on the maternity aspect this year that came through. I feel like I'm kind of blanking on some of the titles of the talks. They were amazing. But yeah, I can share the link with you as well. You can put it in the description of this for like all the videos.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And you've got some great photos and videos from the day. How many sessions did you have? There's loads.
Oh,
in the first, I don't know.
I don't even know. Yeah, we had... It was like 48 vendors and like practitioners. Yeah, obviously some of them were on panels together. So yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was pretty packed as a day. It definitely could be over 2 days. Hiring a physical space, it's pretty expensive. So yeah, we had to do it like that this year.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the day for the fact that I was very proud of you and all the gang for putting it together, because it's a big achievement, and it's in a really, it's very community driven. Somewhere like Grangetown can often be neglected in comparison to other parts of Cardiff. And so it was great to see the community come out. It was a very gentle space, it was very family orientated, very peaceful.
Yeah.
There wasn't drama. Yeah,
it wasn't like a chaotic event, which can happen quite easily.
It just sort of free flowing.
Yeah,
and
spaciousness is really important to me.
Yeah. So I sensed all of the I could see all of your touches across the whole thing, which is really cool.
Can I say one thing on? So Grangetown is the most diverse ward in Cardiff ethnically, so possibly the whole of Wales. I love that. I grew up there. Primary school, I lived in Grangetown. The pavilion is a really, really gorgeous space, and it has this enclosed green area. And just if you have children and you're coming to an event, but you're bringing children, you want to, being matricentric, we really wanted to have a space where parents could feel confident that the kids can run off and there's going to be eyes on them and they're safe, but they don't have to be like hyper vigilant. They can actually relax. So that was part of why it was so important that we hosted there. I also know a lot of sanctuary seeking families and refugees are dispersed along the 2 main roads around the pavilion as well. And like you said, wouldn't necessarily have a health event of this scale in that area. The pavilion do a really great job of having quite a diverse amount of community-based events there, like really great things happening. But as you've mentioned, the day was so packed with like a range of talks and things like that, where we're bringing in some people that were from the community, some people from the wider community, and then a handful of people from outside of Cardiff as well. So, and it was free for Grangetown residents, which is something that we're always going to stick to because it is their community hub. So yeah, hopefully it was enriching and pouring more into the space than we took away. That was important to us.
Yeah, and you could tell. I mean, it's it's a really cool day to be part of. Are there particular people, figures, teachers, friends, or family members who've inspired you to do the work that you do today?
Yeah, so many. Obviously, you mentioned Mars, you mentioned Nicola. They're so committed to like dignity in birth, which is really important to me. So yeah, definitely those 2 amazing women. They come and support the festival both years now. And then there is a midwife in Bali called Robin Lim, and she wrote a book called The Forgotten Chakra, and it's about the placenta, which is an incredible book. But her birth center that she runs basically through donations, before her birth center, women would give birth, and if they couldn't afford the hospital fees, the hospital would send women out and the babies would stay in the hospital, and women were known to like sleep on the steps outside until their family could come and pay. Like I heard really horror stories like that, and obviously that's so bad for them and also really, really bad for babies. And so Robin Lim is Balinese American and is a midwife, so she set up this birth center, but she also does a huge amount of relief work. So while people are running away from sites of volcano explosions and earthquakes, she's going into those areas as fairly elder person to make sure that pregnant women are getting out safely. She's incredible. She does a lot for the elderly there as well, like lots of free clinics and things. So when I moved to Bali, I literally moved to live near her birth center with the idea that I would go into their training, which happens once a year, and then COVID happened, so I couldn't do that, but I will go back. She's incredible. My other teachers, Shani and Alexandra, they wrote Wild Power and Wise Power, and I've done their menstruality leadership coaching. I learned so much from them about the cycle, and like as a solo entrepreneur, it's really easy to feel like, does this even make sense? What am I doing? Like it's very easy to doubt yourself if it's even needed. It's obviously quite niche, especially in the way that I do it. I'm not talking about productivity or hack your cycles or anything that could be very marketable and trendy. So it's it's very counterculture in a lot of ways. So yeah, the Red School with Shani and Alexandra really reaffirmed why this work is so needed to me. Yeah, a million other people. Yeah, but they're the ones that come to mind. I meant to say Uma as well. Sorry.
Oh, so who? So is that so who?
Uma Dinsmore Thule wrote Yoni Shakti, which is an enormous manual / I don't know, just incredible yogic text. And she coined the word womb yoga. And when I was living in Singapore, I met this really cool yoga teacher, and I was saying to her, oh, like, I just don't understand how there's not a style of yoga specific to like women and cycling for bouldering. She was like, there is, it's called womb yoga. And I was like, yeah, but what if it was like, all the phases and blah, blah. And she was like, it's called womb yoga. And I was like, no way, does this exist? And she showed me the book, and it's just an incredible piece of work. I've said it to Uma in person. I think she's a genius. Really like changed so much about how a lot of teachers practice, and that will continue to have ripples through the world. And she also delivers amazing nidra sessions and is very much about rest as a way of kind of resisting and passive kind of protest, which is so needed, I think, at the moment, because we're all pretty frazzled in our own ways. So yeah, Uma's been a massive influence on me as well.
Will this be the final one? So for anyone listening who feels inspired by your work or interested in finding out more about the studio, where can they find out more information about Womb CIC or how to get involved?
So the website is wombcic.co.uk. The Instagram that I'm currently using is womb.sanctuary, so that's for the studio. The dormant Instagram for the festival, which we'll probably just use around the festival times, that's womb.cic.festival. But yeah, womb.sanctuary or womb.cic online. Yeah, that's all pop in, 99 Woodfall Road in Cotays.
Cool, that's all the questions for me. Any final thoughts?
No, come and visit the studio if you're listening to this. And yeah, have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being an excellent guest. And that concludes our episode, A Matricentric Future. A huge thank you to my good pal Sinnead for such an illuminating conversation. Really enjoyed catching up with her and discussing her career so far and all the amazing work that she's been doing recently. If you want to learn more about Sinnead's work, you can find more information about Womb CIC online. Head to www.wombcic.co.uk. That's www.wombcic.co.uk. Or you can follow Womb Sanctuary on Instagram. All the links will be provided in the show notes. And if you want to get more content from me, you can find exclusive insights, behind the scenes stories, and extended reflections by subscribing to my Substack, which is also linked in the show notes. The title track for this show is Young Shall Grow, credit and thanks to Afro Cluster, Magugu, and Asha Jane. Spare a Thought is a Be The Change Media Network production. Thanks for listening.
Whether you like